Hi everyone, welcome to Art Atrium. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land, the Fijigo and Gadigal people, and pay respect to the elders, past, present, and emerging. So, this is two solo exhibitions actually, but also a joint exhibition of Cox and David Holm. So, do the second solo exhibition with us, and the first solo exhibition with David. And in fact, we have 3 professors of architecture in the room. So, and I'm sure we have quite a few artists in the audience as well. So, but today it's all about the art. Today it's about them as an artist, and we're very fortunate to have Anthony Burke, who's going to open the exhibition. Professor Anthony Burke, of course, yeah. But everyone would have seen Grand Design Australia, and it's wonderful episodes that's been coming through. So we've got a very popular person here to open the show. I'd like you all to put your hand together for Anthony Burke.
Thank you very much. Evening everyone, how you going? You're standing a long way away. Is this, yeah, good on you. We're all friends here, aren't we? That's better. It's Halloween. It's raining, things are coming out. I mean, what could be scarier than seeing 2 architects pretend to be artists, right? Sorry, can I say that? This is actually a celebration tonight, and 2 fabulously well-known, talented, esteemed architects turning their hands from our discipline to something a little different, something that opens up a whole bunch of really interesting questions. So this is not going to be a long lecture or anything, but I think you'll agree with me that what you're seeing on the walls around us and what these 2 gentlemen here are kind of representing by turning their hand to this work opens up a whole lot of really interesting types of questions for us to be thinking about. I mean, the first one is, what they're painting. I thought they were artists. I thought they were only drawing. But everyone knows David's drawings, and his books are over there. They're on sale, $25 a copy if you want one. And everyone knows Philip's drawings. Forever, as Philip, as a practicing architect, his drawings are preceded him, and we all know your drawings. They're larger than life. They're wonderful. But then to think about what it is for an architect to paint. What happens when that turn? When you cross that bridge, what are we looking for? I mean, the usual arguments go, and I was doing some reading this afternoon because I knew this was on. Usual arguments go, well, the architect's got a function, right? You've got to stand underneath the roof, it's got to stand up, all those things. So there's a functional dimension to architecture. Art doesn't have that requisite. We can get away with murder if we're artists. So we don't have any of those sorts of things to sort of tie us down. Although I'd say if both architecture and art have anything in common, they're both looking for something. They're both looking for some kind of emotional connection. One through space, through experience, through moving through a space like this one. And art on the wall through a different type of exploration around emotion. It's a different way of eliciting emotion from someone. Something much more personal perhaps, but no less the same search, I would argue. So the function thing, I'm not sure if that really holds. I guess the other side of it is though, when you think about art like this on the wall, how do I put this? There is a kind of a melancholy in my mind which comes to drawing. Because drawings in an architectural sense, drawings will always and forever, no matter how theoretical they are, how picturesque they are, how gorgeous they might be, how artistic they are, they will always be measured against the actual building itself, whether it's built or not, built or unbuilt. But that drawing is always a proxy for something else, another experience, something that will happen later on. That's not the same with art. So when we look at what the walls here, the question that's on my mind is, what are we looking for? What is the thing that doesn't require the thing after? So the work in here is complete. It is its own thing. Art is its own thing, but it doesn't need that next subsequent experience to validate it in any way. That gives a lot of weight to what we're looking at around here in my mind. These are complete in and of themselves, which makes them all the more beautiful, I would argue, and all the richer for that, and all the more personal, of course, because of those kinds of thoughts that come up when you come to an exhibition like this. I would also say that, if you go back through the catalogue of architects through history, all the ones that come up in your minds, the Corbs, the Meads, the Frank Lloyd Wrights, they're all painting as well. So it's not like our friends here are the first two architects that turn their hand to a paintbrush. So there's something about the idea of painting for an architect, which is there in the discipline, which is still, I would argue, relatively not understood, less understood than it perhaps should be, but something which is obviously important to a good designing practice, something which is essential to a designing practice. And obviously, with two talented architects like these two, this is only maybe the tip of an iceberg of a creative process. So that's where we are. That's what we're here to celebrate tonight. I think when you look around the walls, like I am, I'm feeling, it puts a smile on my face to see the colours, the tones, the textures, and all the rest. The other thing I would mention, just in passing, is it's no mistake, or it doesn't seem to me to be an oddity, that what we're looking at around us here are landscapes. If an architect wants to paint anything, perhaps it would always start with a fundamental, like context, like place, like landscape. So landscapes are these things that perhaps we are going back to, or architects, I'm saying architects in general, you two are going back to explore again some of those most fundamental principles of architecture through a very different creative process, the one of painting. So maybe there's something in that for us. So that's my little spiel. That's my couple of thoughts coming over here tonight, thinking, what are we going to look at? What are we going to actually see from these two? I don't see a lot of figure. I see a little bit of figure. I see a lot of tone. I see a lot of texture. I see a lot of beautiful colour. Yeah, I think these are very animated sorts of principles, and the idea that there is less figure perhaps than I would have imagined from two architects used to drawing in fine lines, put roofs on buildings and all the rest, is a kind of interesting move into a step into an abstraction perhaps, or a step into a softer space perhaps, or perhaps a step into a less defined kind of idea of representation, a freer area of representation. These are all my ideas. So I have no idea what these guys think. So I was going to ask them, Philip, actually, the first question I'm going to ask you is, why do you paint?
Well, I paint because I have to paint. I think it's the spirit within you that wants you to paint. It's a bit, why do you compose music? Why do you write poetry? Why do you do anything?
Yeah.
It really is within yourself that you want to express the joy of being a part of this world.
Yeah.
And particularly with architecture, I think that we are brought up in the idea of genius working, of the spirit of place. When we look at a site or we look at landscape, we are meant to respond to that particular landscape to put a building in. And I think the interpretations that you see around the walls tonight are really our interpretation of how we see the landscape. It might be an abstraction, it might be in colour, or forms, or textures, or whatever it is, but certainly it's related to our perception of what the landscape is, in order that architecture may pervade in it one day.
One day, yeah. Do you find, just another question, a follow-up question, do you find that this is somehow more freeing for you?
Yes, I mean, architecture is constipation, really.
Did you get that?
We're so restricted in architecture, both from a technology viewpoint, environmental, political, social, and all the other constraints that architecture has upon what you are creating. To something to have the release and to have the freedom of painting is a complete and utter joy. But the other thing that my comment is that with AI coming in and IT, architects today have lost the art of drawing. They are so addicted to the computer that drawing and painting have become very much, well, they've disappeared almost. And certainly the schools of architecture which we represent do not encourage painting and drawing as a part of the curriculum of the courses there. And I think that's a great pity because when I went to Sydney University, we had Lloyd Reed, we had Ron Wakeman, we had the absolutely terrific artists who encouraged us to look at architecture through artist eyes and to encourage drawing and painting. Sadly, I don't think the universities have got artists really employed in that sense, where they are encouraging young architects to draw and paint and to look at the landscape of their environment.
Perfect. Thanks, Philip.
Can I build on that? Of course.
I'm going to build on that. I think you save your questions up.
Yeah, I will.
The other aspect I think about digital, which is really, we're in this sort of societally obsessed situation with all things digital, is that I know that Philip and myself try and look at landscapes and explore a couple of aspects. Is that we're painting a once-off still, as you're saying, but to try and capture as much dynamism and movement in that as you possibly can. So it's almost like a counter-argument against all of the digital noise that's happening in our lives. The other aspect of that as well, which I know that we both try and pursue, is that it's the notion of perspective and the idea of movement through multiple perspectives. So you see what we're trying to do, I guess, with landscapes is to flatten them, bend them, twist them, so they're not necessarily accurate renditions of what you might see in the landscape. We're trying to capture the movement. And I think that that's a cue for architecture as well, so that when you're designing a building, you want people to be able to sort of move around it and glide around it. So those characterizations of various perspectives are really important. I think we're exploring that here as well.
Yeah, but hold on, mate. So when you're painting, David, because I want to say you're relatively new. You've been
watercolouring for a long time.
but this kind of painting is relatively new.
New.
What are you hunting for?
It's interesting, we all talk about heroes, so I've sort of touched on that a little bit. Sort of, I look at the work, especially the latter work of, say, David Hockney, and his idea is that the more perspectives, the more fun that you're having, sort of thing. So I guess I'm looking to try and understand the essences, and Philip stole my line, as he always does, with the genius loci and the sort of sense of place. So that's embedded in the architecture that I think we create, that it's of its place. So you're trying to find the essence of the place, and it's, I drive around all over the place and you just look at little views and you see little views and sort of think, well, that's a painting, that's a painting. So it's those essential moments that I think you're trying to capture. That's the key, which might be a couple of lines, curves, and a couple of colours.
Yeah.
Minimal. And then again, our sort of motto that we use quite a lot is to try and do more with less.
Yeah.
So you're always trying to then strip it back.
So the exhibition is called Dueling Landscapes, is that right? Who won?
Everyone's a winner.
I think you'll agree with me when you walk in and you see this kind of work. Thanks both, by the way, for those great answers. It definitely puts a smile on your face. There's a joy hidden here. There is a levity which is something that we can all do with a lot more of these days. So I'm incredibly appreciative of the spirit that is coming from the walls that we're seeing around us. And I think ultimately, you'd also probably agree with these dualities, artist, architect, drawing, painting. In the end, they're kind of actually useless kinds of rubrics, because this creative process is so intrinsically embroiled. It is so sort of bound together to see these guys paint and then turn their hand in the next moment to a drawing or to a building or to something else actually only makes absolute sense to me. So join me in congratulating David and Philip for this wonderful exhibition. And I think enjoy the rest of the